The Crithian battlecruiser hung in orbit like a blade waiting to fall. Commander Zethkar studied the primitive planet below with what passed for satisfaction among his species. 3 other invasion fleets had tried to claim Earth. None had succeeded. But those fools had announced themselves. Given the humans time to prepare their pathetic defenses, Zethkar would not make that mistake. His fleet had slipped past the human orbital stations during their shift change, using stealth fields that cost more than most planetary governments could afford. Now 12 warships sat in high orbit, invisible, ready to strike. The plan was simple and brutal. Eliminate their air power first, then their command centers, then watch as the humans tore themselves apart in the chaos. Intelligence reports showed that human aircraft were fragile things, bound by primitive combustion engines and outdated physics. Their pilots were brave but limited, unable to process information faster than their organic brains allowed. Easy targets, begin Phase 1, Zethkar commanded. Deploy hunter drones to Grid 773. There is a human military installation there. We will start by removing their air defenses. The drones launched in silence, sleek metallic spheres that could track and destroy anything that flew. Each one carried enough firepower to level a city block and shielding that could deflect primitive missiles. 40 drones against one small human base. It would be over in minutes. Far below, at Fort Rucker in Alabama, Captain Sarah Chen was having what she thought would be a routine morning. The coffee was terrible, the weather briefing was boring, and her Apache helicopter sat on the tarmac looking as mean as ever. She loved that machine the way some people love their cars, every scratch and panel a familiar friend. "Chen, you're up for patrol," her commanding officer called out. "Just a standard sweep. Nothing exciting." Sarah grabbed her helmet and jogged toward her bird. Her co-pilot and gunner, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, was already running pre-flight checks. They had flown together for 3 years and could practically read each other's minds in combat. "All green," Marcus said as she climbed in. "Those sensors are acting weird. Keeps showing ghost contacts in high orbit." "Probably space junk," Sarah replied, strapping in. "Or the techs need to recalibrate again." She brought the Apache to life, feeling the familiar shudder as the rotors spun up. The helicopter lifted off smoothly, banking east toward their patrol route. The morning sun painted the landscape in gold and orange, peaceful and calm. That peace lasted exactly 4 minutes. "Contact," Marcus shouted. "Multiple unknowns inbound, high speed, descending fast." Sarah's displays lit up like a Christmas tree. 40 objects were diving toward the base, moving at speeds that should have been impossible for anything in atmosphere. They were perfectly spaced, perfectly coordinated, and very clearly not friendly. "Fort Rucker, this is Apache 27. We have multiple hostile contacts inbound to your position. Request immediate backup," and the first drone screamed past them, close enough that Sarah felt the Apache shake from the displacement. It ignored them completely, focused on the base below. She watched in horror as it opened fire, energy weapons tearing through hangars and control towers. Then 39 more joined it. The base erupted in fire and chaos. Buildings exploded. Aircraft were ripped apart before they could launch, and personnel scattered like ants. Sarah felt her blood turn to ice, then to fire. "Marcus, get me a lock on those things." "They're too fast. The targeting system can't wait. I've got one." "It's slowing down to make another pass." Sarah threw the Apache into a hard turn, lining up on the drone that had just finished destroying the base hospital. Her thumb hovered over the weapons release, but she knew their Hellfire missiles were designed for tanks, not alien technology that could dance through the sky like angry wasps. "Screw it," she muttered. "Fox 3. The missile leaped from its rail, rocket motor blazing. The drone detected it immediately and began evasive maneuvers, but Sarah had led the shot perfectly. The Hellfire connected and the drone vanished in a ball of flame and debris. There was a moment of absolute silence across all frequencies. Then every single remaining drone stopped attacking the base and turned toward her Apache. "Oh," Sarah said calmly into the radio. "I think I made them mad." Aboard the battlecruiser, Zethkar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. One of his drones destroyed by a primitive helicopter. Impossible. The humans shouldn't have weapons capable of tracking something moving that fast, let alone hitting it. All drones priority target the aircraft that fired. Kill it now. 39 alien killing machines locked onto Sarah's position and accelerated to attack speed. She saw them coming on her displays, saw the inevitable math of it. They were faster, more maneuverable, and she was just one helicopter with limited ammunition. Marcus was frantically working his station, trying to get locks, trying to find any advantage. "Sarah, we need to run. We can't fight all of them." "The base needs time to evacuate," she replied, already plotting her course. "And these things seem real interested in me now, so let's give them a chase." She pushed the Apache to its limits, skimming low over trees and hills, using every trick she had learned in 15 years of flying. The drones followed like a swarm of mechanical hornets, firing energy bolts that carved burning trails through the air. Sarah dodged and weaved, feeling the Apache respond to her every input. A bolt missed her rotor by inches. Another scorched past the tail. She fired chaff and flares even though she knew they probably wouldn't work against these weapons. Buying seconds of confusion. "Come on, you alien bastards," she growled, leading them away from the base, away from her people. "Let's see how you like flying down in the dirt with me." She dove into a canyon, rotors nearly touching the rock walls on either side. The drones followed without hesitation, their formation never breaking. Marcus was calling out distances, threats, angles, his voice steady despite the certain death chasing them. Then Sarah saw it. A narrow gap ahead, barely wide enough for the Apache. She grinned. "Marcus, hold on to something." "Oh no, Sarah, whatever you're thinking." She punched through the gap, folding the helicopter nearly sideways, rotors screaming in protest. Behind her, 3 drones tried to follow and smashed into the rock walls. Exploding in spectacular fashion, 36 left, high above. Zethkar watched his drone count drop and felt something he had not experienced in decades of warfare. Uncertainty. This human pilot was doing things that should not be possible with such primitive technology. Every tactical analysis said the helicopter should have been destroyed in the first 30 seconds. Yet here they were, 3 minutes into the engagement, and his drone swarm was being led on a merry chase through terrain they were never designed to fight in. "Deploy additional drones," he ordered, "and prepare to fire orbital strikes if necessary. I want that pilot dead." Sarah pulled the Apache up and over a ridgeline, her eyes scanning for anything she could use. The drones were learning her tactics now, spreading their formation wider, cutting off escape routes before she could exploit them. Marcus had managed to get locks on 2 more and destroyed them with their remaining hellfires. But now they were down to just the cannon. 34 drones still hunted them. "Sarah, fuel is getting critical," Marcus warned. 10 minutes, maybe less with all these maneuvers." "I know," she replied, her mind racing. 10 minutes. The base would need at least 20 to get people clear and scramble proper air support. She needed to buy more time, but physics was not on her side. Then her radio crackled with a voice she did not expect. "Apache 27, this is Viper 31. We are inbound to your position with a full weapons load. Hold on, Chen, the cavalry is coming." Sarah felt a surge of hope. Viper 31 was Captain Jake Morrison, flying an F-16 out of Eglin Air Force Base. If he was coming in hot, he must have seen what was happening and scrambled without waiting for orders. "Viper 31, negative. These things are beyond anything we've trained for. They'll tear you apart." Jake's response was filled with the cocky confidence of a fighter pilot who had never met a challenge he did not like. "Chen, you've kept 34 of those things busy with a helicopter. I think I can manage with a jet. Besides, I brought friends." Sarah checked her displays and saw them. 6 F-16s coming in fast and low, loaded for bear. Behind them, higher up, she caught radar signatures of F-22 Raptors and what looked like a B-1 bomber. Someone had scrambled everything that could fly. All aircraft, these drones are fast, shielded, and they learn quick. Do not engage in straight lines, do not give them predictable shots, and for God's sake, stay low where they have to maneuver. "Copy that," Jake replied. "All right, boys, let's show these aliens why we train in the mountains." "Break and engage." The F-16 screamed into the battle space, immediately splitting up and going after individual drones. The aliens responded instantly, their swarm dividing to meet the new threats. Sarah used the distraction to gain altitude and catch her breath, watching as human and alien technology clashed in the sky. The first F-16 got a lock and fired an AMRAAM missile. The drone dodged, but Jake had anticipated that, firing a second missile into the drone's evasion path. The alien craft flew right into it and disintegrated. "Splash one," Jake whooped. "These things are fast, but they're predictable once you figure out their dodge pattern." Sarah watched as the other pilots learned the same lesson. adapting their tactics on the fly. The drones were superior in almost every way, but they fought with mathematical precision. The humans fought with creativity, with crazy maneuvers that made no tactical sense but worked anyway. An F-16 flew inverted under a drone's energy blast. Then snap rolled and fired its cannon up into the alien's belly. Another pilot used his afterburner to create a heat signature, drawing 3 drones into a cluster before his wingman hit them with a cluster bomb. Aboard his ship, Zethkar could not believe what he was watching. Human pilots were supposed to be limited, slow, predictable. These were none of those things. They were adapting faster than his drones could compensate, using tactics that his tactical computer labeled as irrational and likely to result in pilot death. Yet somehow they worked. How are they doing this? He demanded of his tactical officer. The humans are not following standard combat doctrine, Commander. They are improvising, taking risks that no sane species would accept. Our drones cannot predict chaos, Zethkar's crest flared in anger. Then stop trying to predict them. Override the tactical AI. Manual control, full aggression. I want those aircraft destroyed now. The drones suddenly became more erratic, more vicious. Energy beams carved through the sky in random patterns. 2 F-16s were hit almost simultaneously, one pilot ejecting successfully, the other not so lucky. Sarah felt her heart clench as she watched the jet spiral down in flames. All aircraft, they have changed tactics. Stay random, stay aggressive. The B-1 bomber, which had been circling high above, suddenly dove toward the furball. Its bomb bay doors opened and it released not bombs but dozens of small missiles, each one independently targeting a different drone. The aliens scattered, but 12 more drones fell from the sky in rapid succession. Sarah seized the opportunity. With the drones distracted by the bomber's missile spam, she dove back into the fight, her cannon blazing. The Apache's 30mm shells might not have the fancy guidance systems of the missiles, but at close range against a distracted target, they did not need them. She shredded 2 drones before they even knew she was there. Marcus was laughing now, the kind of slightly unhinged laugh that comes from surviving the impossible. Chen, you're certifiably insane, you know that? Takes one to know one, Webb. Reloading. The F-22 Raptors entered the fight like avenging angels, their stealth capabilities letting them get close before opening fire. The drones tried to adapt, tried to track the Raptors, but the human aircraft were too fast, too well designed. Within 2 minutes, 8 more drones were burning wreckage. Zethkar watched his drone count drop below 10 and felt something he had never felt before. Fear. Not fear of death, but fear of failure, of returning to his superiors and explaining how a single planet's air force had defeated his carefully planned ambush. All ships, prepare to fire orbital strikes. If we cannot win with precision, we will win with overwhelming force. His weapons officer hesitated. Commander, orbital strikes will reveal our position to the human defense network. We will lose our tactical advantage. We have already lost it, Zethkar roared. Fire! High above Earth, energy weapons that could crack continents began to glow. Targeting computers locked onto the coordinates where the battle raged. In 5 seconds, everything within a 10-mile radius would be reduced to glass and ash. On the ground, every human radar installation screamed warnings. At NORAD, at the Pentagon, at Space Force headquarters, alarms blared. The orbital threat that had been hiding revealed itself through its weapons discharge. Sarah heard the warning tone in her cockpit, saw the orbital strike marker appear on her HUD. She had 4 seconds. Not enough time to outrun the blast radius. Not enough time to do anything but key her radio one last time. This is Apache 27. Multiple hostile ships in orbit firing on our position. Get those coordinates to Space Force and... The world turned white. But Sarah Chen did not die. At the last possible microsecond, something else happened. Something the Crithians did not know about, could not have planned for. The United States, along with several other nations, had been working on orbital defense systems since the second invasion attempt. Particle beam weapons, railguns, and experimental shield generators, all hidden in what looked like ordinary communications satellites. The shield generators activated, throwing up a bubble of energy that deflected the orbital strike just enough. Instead of vaporizing everything, the alien weapons carved a burning trench across empty farmland 2 miles away. Sarah pulled up hard, her ears ringing, her vision spotted, but alive. Around her, the other pilots were checking in, shaken but functional. And high above, the Crithian fleet was suddenly lit up on every sensor and targeting system Earth possessed. Sarah looked up at the sky, at the stars where she knew those ships were hiding, and she started to laugh. It was not a kind laugh. It was the laugh of a person who had just been shot at with planet-killing weapons and survived. She keyed her radio, broadcasting on all frequencies, knowing the aliens would hear her. You missed. Then she turned her Apache toward the nearest drone, which was trying to flee back to orbit, and fired every remaining round she had. The drone exploded beautifully. Aboard his ship. Sethkar heard that laughter, heard those two words, and knew with absolute certainty that he had made a terrible mistake. The humans were not primitive. They were not easy targets. They were something far more dangerous. They were survivors who laughed in the face of death, and now they knew exactly where his fleet was hiding. The International Space Defense Command, hidden deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain, erupted into controlled chaos. General Patricia Hawkins stood before a massive holographic display showing 12 Crithian warships suddenly visible in high orbit. They had been ghosts 30 seconds ago. Now they were lit up like Christmas trees, their positions locked, their capabilities being analyzed in real time. Ma'am, we have firing solutions on all 12 targets, a young lieutenant reported. Railgun platforms are charged and ready. Particle beam arrays are online. We can engage in 90 seconds. Hawkins studied the display, her mind working through scenarios. 12 warships, each one capable of glassing a continent. They had revealed themselves to take a shot at one Apache helicopter and a handful of fighters. That spoke to either desperation or arrogance, and she was betting on the latter. Hold fire, she ordered. Let them sweat for 60 seconds. I want to see what they do when they realize they just painted targets on themselves. In orbit, Commander Zethkar was having the same realization. His stealth advantage was gone. His drone swarm was decimated. His orbital strike had failed, and now his sensors were screaming warnings about weapons platforms all across the planet's surface locking onto his fleet. Evasive maneuvers. All ships begin random orbital changes. Deploy countermeasures. His tactical officer looked up from his console, his face pale. Commander, the humans have weapons we did not know about. High-energy particle beams, kinetic railguns, and something else. There are energy signatures that match no known technology. Explain. The shield that deflected our orbital strike. It should not exist. The energy requirements alone should be impossible for a species at their technological level. Zethkar felt his certainty crumbling. Every intelligence report, every analysis, every prediction about human capabilities had been wrong. They were not a primitive species fumbling with early spaceflight. They were warriors who had been preparing for exactly this kind of attack. Open a channel to the fleet. All ships prepare for immediate withdrawal to... The first railgun fired. A telephone pole-sized chunk of tungsten, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, crossed the distance between Earth and the Crithian cruiser Vecthar's blade in less than 2 seconds. The ship's shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and conventional missiles, might as well have been tissue paper. The projectile punched through the shield, through the hull, through the reactor containment, and out the other side. Vecthar's blade exploded with enough force to create a new temporary constellation in the night sky. All ships, emergency jump. Now. Zethkar screamed. But Earth's weapon systems had been designed by people who understood one critical principle. If you are going to shoot at someone, shoot to kill. The particle beam arrays fired next. Invisible lances of concentrated energy that cooked ships from the inside out. 2 more Crithian vessels died before they could activate their faster-than-light drives. The remaining 9 ships managed to jump, vanishing from Earth's orbit in flashes of distorted space-time. But they left behind debris, disabled drones, and enough technological samples to keep human scientists busy for years. In the sky above Alabama, Sarah Chen watched the light show and felt a fierce pride. They had done it. A single Apache helicopter, a handful of fighters, and Earth's hidden defense network had turned back an invasion fleet. Apache 27, this is Fort Rucker Control. You are cleared to land. Also, General Hawkins wants to speak with you personally. Something about giving her a heart attack. Sarah allowed herself a tired smile. Copy that, Control. Coming home. She brought the Apache around, heading back toward the base. The adrenaline was starting to fade now, replaced by exhaustion and the shakes that always came after combat. Marcus was quiet in the back seat, probably experiencing the same crash. "Hey, Webb," she said softly. "We made it." "Yeah," he replied, his voice rough. "We actually did." "Sarah, what you did back there, leading those drones away from the base, that was—" "Don't," she interrupted. "We all did what we had to do. Jake and his boys, the bomber crew, everyone. That's what we do." She paused, then keyed the radio again. "Viper 3-1, you still up?" Jake's voice came back, subdued now that the fighting was done. "Yeah, Chen. Lost 2 birds, but most of us made it. That was the craziest damn fight I've ever been in." "Same. Drinks are on me when we get debriefed. I'll hold you to that." The base came into view, damaged, but not destroyed. Emergency crews were fighting fires, medics were treating wounded, but people were alive. The evacuation she had bought time for had worked. Sarah set the Apache down gently on the tarmac, finally allowing herself to breathe. As she climbed out, her legs nearly gave way. Crew chiefs rushed over to help, but she waved them off. She needed to stand on her own 2 feet, needed to prove to herself that she was still here, still alive. General Hawkins appeared, having apparently commandeered a transport the moment the shooting stopped. The general was a short, stocky woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen 3 alien invasions. She walked up to Sarah and simply stared at her for a long moment. "Captain Chen," Hawkins finally said, "what you did today was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've seen in 30 years of military service." "Possibly both." "Yes, ma'am," Sarah replied, standing at attention despite her exhaustion. "You picked a fight with alien technology we knew nothing about, led them on a chase that by all rights should have killed you in the first minute, and bought enough time for us to scramble a proper response and uncover their entire fleet." "Yes, ma'am." Hawkins was quiet for another moment. Then she smiled, a rare expression that transformed her usually stern face. "Damn fine flying, Captain, damn fine. You and your WSO are getting medals for this, though God knows what we'll call it. The I pissed off an alien fleet and survived award?" Despite herself, Sarah laughed. It came out slightly hysterical. Months of tension releasing all at once. Marcus, who had joined them, was grinning like an idiot. "General, permission to ask a question?" Sarah said. "Granted. Those orbital weapons, the shields, all of that. How long have we had that capability?" Hawkins' expression became serious again. "Since the second invasion 6 years ago. After the Draken fleet nearly reached the surface, the Security Council decided we needed to stop playing defense and start preparing to punch back. Every nation contributed. Chinese railguns, Russian particle beams, American shield generators, European targeting systems, all hidden in plain sight, disguised as civilian infrastructure. So we've been ready." "We've been ready," Hawkins confirmed. "We just needed a reason to show our hand. The Crithians gave us that reason when they tried to kill you." Sarah thought about that. About the risk Hawkins had taken by waiting to fire, by letting the aliens commit fully before revealing Earth's true capabilities. "You used me as bait." "I did not," Hawkins said firmly. "You were already in the fight when we realized what was happening. But once you were engaged, once it became clear the aliens were fixated on you, yes, I made the call to wait, to let them think they had us on the ropes. Captain, if I could take that decision back, I would. But I cannot, and you are alive, and we just sent a message to every hostile species watching Earth." "What message?" Hawkins looked up at the sky, where the debris from the Crithian ship still burned like falling stars. "That we are not easy prey. That we have teeth. That anyone who comes here looking for a quick conquest is going to leave in body bags, or whatever the alien equivalent is." Around them, the base was slowly returning to some semblance of order. Damaged aircraft were being cataloged, wounded were being treated, and intelligence officers were already swarming over the crashed drone pieces. Humanity's war machine was analyzing, learning, preparing for the next threat. Because everyone knew there would be a next threat. The galaxy was not a peaceful place, and Earth was a young species that had something older civilizations wanted. A beautiful, life-bearing planet in a strategic location. But today, at least, they had won. Today they had proven that humanity was not going to roll over and die. Today, Captain Sarah Chen and her Apache helicopter had helped write a new chapter in human history. "Captain," Hawkins said, pulling Sarah from her thoughts, "get some rest. Get checked by medical. Then report to debriefing in 6 hours. We have a lot to discuss." "Yes, ma'am." As Hawkins walked away, Sarah looked at her Apache. The helicopter was scorched, dented, and probably would never fly quite right again. But it had brought her home. Marcus came up beside her, following her gaze. "Think they'll retire her?" he asked. Sarah smiled. Not a chance. This bird is going in a museum someday. The Apache that started a war. Or maybe the Apache that prevented one. I like the second one better. Me too. Webb, me too. They stood there in the morning sun. Two pilots who had faced impossible odds and survived, watching as their world slowly processed what had just happened. Above them, the stars waited, full of threats and promises in equal measure. But Sarah Chen was not afraid. She had learned something important today. Humanity might be young, might be outgunned, might be facing enemies with technology centuries ahead of their own. But they had something the aliens did not expect. They had the ability to adapt, to improvise, to do the impossible when pushed. They had pilots who would face down warships in helicopters. The debriefing room was packed. Sarah had expected a handful of officers and maybe some intelligence analysts. Instead, she found herself facing a who's who of military and civilian leadership. Joint Chiefs of Staff, representatives from a dozen allied nations, scientists in lab coats and people in suits who refused to identify which agency they worked for. General Hawkins sat at the head of the table, looking far more tired than she had 6 hours ago. Captain Chen, Lieutenant Webb, please have a seat. This is going to take a while. Sarah and Marcus sat, both freshly showered and in clean uniforms, though Sarah still felt like she was coated in a layer of grime that would never wash off. Coffee appeared in front of them, probably the only thing keeping her upright at this point. Let's start with the basics, Hawkins began. Captain Chen, walk us through your engagement from the moment you detected the drones. Sarah took a sip of coffee and began to talk. She described the sudden appearance of the contacts, the attack on the base, her decision to draw them away, every twist and turn of the aerial chase. The room was silent except for her voice and the occasional scratch of pens on paper. When she got to the part where she fired her first missile, one of the scientists interrupted. You had no tactical data on the drones, no idea if your weapons would even be effective, yet you engaged immediately. Why? Sarah looked at the scientist, a thin man with glasses that kept sliding down his nose. Sir, with respect, they were destroying my base and killing my people. I was not going to just fly away and watch, but the logical action would have been to retreat and gather intelligence for a more informed strike. Logic does not mean much when buildings are exploding, Sarah replied, keeping her voice level. Besides, we got plenty of intelligence. They were fast, shielded, and deadly. We learned that real quick. But we also learned they could be destroyed with conventional weapons if you hit them right. The scientist nodded, making notes. Sarah continued her account, through the arrival of the fighters, the change in drone tactics, the orbital strike, and finally the destruction of the Crithian fleet. When she finished, the room erupted in questions. Everyone wanted to know something different. How did the drones move? What was their reaction time? Could she describe their weapons' effects? Did they show any hesitation or emotion? Sarah answered as best she could, but eventually Hawkins had to call for order. Enough, the captain has given us extensive data. Now I want to discuss what comes next. A woman in a Navy uniform, Admiral Chen, no relation to Sarah, leaned forward. The Crithians jumped out with 9 ships. They know where we are. They know we have better defenses than they expected, and they are going to tell everyone else. We need to assume they will come back with reinforcements. Or others will come, added a man with a European accent, some kind of NATO liaison. Word will spread. Earth is a prize, but now it is also a challenge. Some species will see our defenses as a deterrent. Others will see them as a gauntlet to be overcome. General Hawkins nodded grimly. That's the assessment of every intelligence agency we have talked to. The question is, what do we do about it? We build more, said one of the scientists, a woman with brilliant red hair. More railguns, more particle beams, more shield generators. We fortify everything. We need ships, countered an Air Force general. Orbital defense is fine, but we need to be able to project power, to take the fight to them before they reach Earth. We need allies, the NATO liaison insisted. There are other species out there who oppose the aggressive expansion of empires like the Crithians. We should be reaching out, forming coalitions. The arguments went back and forth, various factions pushing their agendas. Sarah listened, feeling increasingly out of place. She was a helicopter pilot, not a strategic planner, but then Hawkins caught her eye and gestured for her to speak. Captain, you have been quiet. You faced these aliens directly. What do you think we need? Sarah hesitated, then decided to just be honest. Ma'am, I think we need all of it. More weapons, yes. Ships, absolutely. Allies if we can find them. But more than that, we need to stop thinking like we are the underdogs. Explain, Hawkins prompted. Today I went up against technology that should have killed me in seconds. It did not, because I did not fight it on its terms. I used terrain, I used unpredictability, I used every dirty trick I know. And you know what? It worked. The drones were faster and tougher, but they were also rigid, predictable. They fought by a rule book. Sarah stood up, too energized to sit still. We keep hearing about how we are a young species, how we are outmatched, how we need to catch up to the rest of the galaxy. Maybe that's true technologically. But today proved that tech is not everything. We have something they do not seem to have. We have creativity. We have the willingness to do crazy, stupid, illogical things that somehow work. One of the scientists started to object, but Sarah kept going. I am not saying we ignore the tech gap. We absolutely need to keep building, keep improving. But we also need to remember what makes us dangerous. We adapt, we improvise. We look at a helicopter and a swarm of alien drones and think, yeah, I can take them. That's not stupidity, that's human nature. And it scares the hell out of species that have been doing things the same way for thousands of years. The room was quiet. Then, surprisingly, Admiral Chen started to clap. Others joined in, a slow round of applause that felt more thoughtful than celebratory. Well said, Captain, Hawkins remarked. And that brings me to the next point. Captain Chen, how would you like a new assignment? Sarah blinked. Ma'am, we are forming a new unit, Experimental Tactics Division. The mission is to develop unconventional warfare strategies specifically for asymmetric engagement with technologically superior forces. In other words, figuring out how to fight aliens with whatever we have and win. You want me to teach people how to pick fights they cannot win? Hawkins smiled. I want you to teach them how to pick fights they should not win and win them anyway. You will have access to test pilots, special forces, intelligence assets, whatever you need. You will work with scientists to understand alien psychology and technology, and you will create a playbook for how humanity fights when we are outgunned. Sarah looked at Marcus, who looked as surprised as she felt. Ma'am, I am just a pilot. I am not a strategist or a teacher. You are exactly what we need, Hawkins insisted. Strategists think in terms of force ratios and supply lines. Teachers work from established doctrine. We need someone who thinks like you do, who sees a problem and finds the unexpected solution. Someone who leads 34 killer drones into a canyon just to see if they will follow. They did follow, Sarah pointed out, and 3 of them died for it. That's the kind of thinking we need more of. Sarah considered it. Part of her wanted to say no, wanted to just go back to flying her Apache and living a normal life. But a larger part, the part that had laughed in the face of orbital bombardment, knew that normal was gone. The galaxy had knocked on Earth's door, and they had answered with railguns and defiance. I'll do it, she said, on one condition. Name it. Lieutenant Webb comes with me. And I want access to pilots from every branch, every nation. If we are going to develop tactics for fighting aliens, we need perspectives from everyone who flies, drives, or shoots. Hawkins nodded. Done. You will have your pick of personnel. Report to Peterson Space Force Base in 2 weeks. We are setting up the facility there. The meeting continued for another hour, covering logistics, security protocols, and coordination with international partners. Sarah's head was spinning by the end of it. She had gone from helicopter pilot to alien fighter to tactical instructor in less than 12 hours. As the room finally emptied, Marcus pulled her aside. Sarah, are you sure about this? We are talking about a complete career change. No more flying, just planning and teaching. Who said anything about no more flying? Sarah grinned. Webb, if we are developing tactics, we need to test them. That means we get to be the crazy people who try out every insane idea before we teach it to anyone else. Marcus groaned. I was afraid you would say that. They walked out into the evening air. The base was still recovering, but there was an energy to it now, a sense of purpose. People moved with determination, rebuilding, repairing, preparing. The attack had hurt them, but it had not broken them. Sarah's phone buzzed. A message from her sister, a civilian who lived in California. Saw the news. Are you okay? They are saying you saved everyone. She typed back quickly. I'm fine. Didn't save everyone, but we did okay. Talk soon. More messages flooded in. Friends, family, old flight school buddies. The story was already spreading, being picked apart by news agencies and social media. Sarah Chen, the Apache pilot who took on an alien invasion. She winced at some of the more dramatic headlines. "You are famous now," Marcus observed, looking at his own phone. "They are calling you the Canyon Killer. That's actually pretty cool." "I hate it," Sarah muttered. "I just did my job. Your job was a patrol flight. You went way beyond that." They found a quiet spot near the flight line watching the sun set. Their Apache sat nearby, maintenance crews swarming over it assessing the damage. Sarah felt a pang of affection for the machine. It had taken everything she had thrown at it and kept flying. "You think we can actually do this?" Marcus asked quietly. Peterson Space Force Base looked nothing like Sarah had expected. She had imagined a standard military facility with some extra satellites dishes. Instead, she found a sprawling complex of new buildings, underground bunkers, and what looked like an entire aerospace research campus. Billions of dollars had clearly been poured into this place, and most of it had happened in the shadows. Marcus whistled beside her as their shuttle drove through the main gate. "They have been busy. How long has this been under construction?" 4 years, apparently, Sarah replied, reading from the briefing packet they had been given. "Started right after the second invasion. Most of it was built underground to avoid satellite detection. The above-ground stuff only went up in the last 6 months. They were directed to Building 7, a nondescript structure that turned out to be an entrance to a massive underground facility. Elevators took them down 3 levels to a briefing room where the rest of their team was already gathering. General Hawkins was there, along with a dozen officers Sarah did not recognize and twice as many scientists. The other pilots were arriving in clusters, looking around with the same mixture of curiosity and apprehension Sarah felt. "Welcome to Project Wildcard," Hawkins announced once everyone was seated. "You are here because you have demonstrated the ability to think unconventionally under pressure. Your mission is to develop, test, and teach asymmetric warfare tactics against technologically superior opponents. In plain English, you are going to figure out how to beat aliens who should be able to crush us." She clicked a remote, and a holographic display sprang to life showing the Crithian drones. "We recovered 17 intact or partially intact drones from the Alabama engagement. Our scientists have been taking them apart. Dr. Ramesh, if you would." A small Indian man in a lab coat stood up, practically vibrating with excitement. "These machines are remarkable. The material science alone is decades ahead of us. But we have learned some interesting things. First, they are controlled by distributed AI, each drone part of a networked swarm intelligence. Second, they have clear engagement protocols that they do not deviate from easily. Third, and most interesting, they are optimized for space combat, not atmospheric fighting. That is why they struggled in the canyons," Sarah realized aloud. "They were designed for 3-dimensional space where there are no obstacles." "Exactly," Dr. Ramesh beamed at her. "In open space, these things would be nearly unstoppable. But in atmosphere, with terrain, with weather, with all the chaos of planetary combat, they are much more vulnerable. The Crithians, like many spacefaring species, have been fighting in the void for so long they have forgotten how messy planetary warfare can be." Another scientist, a stern-looking woman with Russian accent, stood up. "We have also analyzed the Crithian ship fragments. Their technology is impressive, yes, but also conservative. They build things to last for centuries, which means they do not innovate quickly. Their weapons, their shields, their engines, all are refined versions of technology that is thousands of years old. Whereas we," Hawkins picked up the thread, "change our tactics and technology constantly because we have to. We have been at war with each other for our entire history. We innovate or die. That is our advantage." Jake raised his hand. "Ma'am, with respect, I think we all get that we are scrappy underdogs. What exactly are we supposed to do here? We cannot just theory-craft tactics. We need to test them. And I do not see any aliens volunteering to be target practice." Hawkins smiled. "Follow me." She led them deeper into the facility, through security checkpoints that scanned everything from retinas to DNA. Finally, they emerged into an enormous underground hangar. Sarah stopped in her tracks, her jaw dropping. The hangar was easily a mile long, filled with aircraft of every description. Helicopters, fighters, bombers, drones. But that was not what made Sarah stare. In the center of the hangar, suspended from massive cradles, were 3 alien ships, not Crithian ships. These were different designs, sleeker, stranger. One looked almost organic, all curves and flowing lines. Another was a brutal wedge of dark metal. The third was impossibly delicate, like crystal, and light had been woven together. "Where did you get those?" Yuki asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Trade," Hawkins replied. Salvage. One very lucky capture during the third invasion. These are our training platforms. We have studied them. We have learned to fly them, and now you are going to learn to fight against them. Sarah walked closer to the nearest ship, the organic-looking one. Up close, she could see that it was not metal at all, but something that looked almost like bone or shell. You are telling me we are going to fly against alien spacecraft? You are going to do more than that, Hawkins said. You are going to fly them. We need to understand how they think, how they fight, how they react. The best way to do that is to put ourselves in their place. Half of you will fly human aircraft using conventional and unconventional tactics. The other half will fly these ships, trying to counter those tactics using alien doctrine and technology. This is insane, Marcus muttered. Yes, Hawkins agreed. It is also necessary. We have maybe 5 years, maybe less, before someone decides to try Earth again. The Crithians will want revenge. Others will want to test our defenses. We need to be ready with tactics that work. Tactics we can teach to every pilot, tanker, and soldier on Earth. Over the next week, Sarah learned more about alien technology than she had ever thought possible. The organic-looking ship was Viridian, from a species that grew their technology rather than building it. It responded to neural impulses, making it incredibly fast and intuitive for its native pilots, but difficult for humans to control without extensive training. The wedge ship was Krillian, heavily armored and designed for brutal frontal assaults. It was slow to turn but could take absurd amounts of punishment. The crystal ship was Luminar, a scout vessel that relied on stealth and speed rather than weapons or armor. Sarah was assigned to learn the Viridian ship. She spent hours in simulators, then in the actual craft with safety pilots standing by. The ship felt alive under her control, responding to her thoughts as much as her physical inputs. It was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. You are getting the hang of it, her instructor, a former test pilot named Colonel Briggs, observed. Most people take weeks to get to this level. You are doing it in days. It is not that different from a helicopter, Sarah replied, guiding the ship through a simple maneuver. You have to feel it, not just control it. Trust the machine to do what you want. Except this machine reads your mind. Then I better think clearly. The first live exercise was scheduled for 2 weeks after their arrival. Sarah and 5 other pilots would fly the alien ships using alien tactics, drawn from captured data and intelligence reports. Jake and his team would fly human aircraft and try to engage them. The exercise area was a massive stretch of Nevada desert, cleared of civilians and monitored by every sensor Earth possessed. Safety protocols were in place. Weapons were set to simulation mode, but everyone knew there was real danger here. These ships could move at speeds that would turn a human into paste if something went wrong. Sarah strapped into the Viridian ship, feeling it wake up around her. The neural interface settled across her temples, and suddenly she could feel the ship's systems like extensions of her own body. Engines, sensors, maneuvering thrusters, all waiting for her command. Wildcard Alpha Team, this is Control. You are cleared for launch. Exercise begins in 5 minutes. Sarah lifted off, the Viridian ship rising smoothly into the air. Around her, the other alien craft did the same. They formed up in a standard Viridian patrol formation, pulled from intelligence data on how that species typically operated. Remember, Colonel Briggs's voice came through the comm. You are not Sarah Chen right now. You are a Viridian pilot. You follow their doctrine, their tactics, their protocols. Do not innovate, do not improvise. Fly like they would fly. Copy that, Control. The 5 minutes counted down. Sarah could see Jake's flight on her sensors. 6 F-16s approaching fast and low. They were using human tactics, staying in the ground clutter, using terrain masking. Good start, exercises live. Engage, engage, engage. Sarah immediately did what a Viridian pilot would do. She climbed to altitude, trusting her ship's speed and sensors to keep her safe. The Viridian doctrine emphasized vertical superiority, getting above your enemy and using gravity and speed to dictate engagement terms. The F-16s scattered as expected, breaking formation to make themselves harder targets. Sarah selected the nearest one, Jake's aircraft, and dove on him. The Viridian ship responded instantly to her thoughts, accelerating to speeds that would have torn a human aircraft apart. Jake saw her coming and did something unexpected. Instead of dodging, he flew straight at her head-on. Sarah's training screamed at her to break off, but she was flying like a Viridian, and they did not break off. They trusted their shields and superior speed. At the last second, Jake rolled inverted and dove, slipping under her by inches. His wingman, who Sarah had not noticed because he had powered down to minimal emissions, popped up behind her and achieved a simulated lock. Wildcard Alpha 1, you are dead, Control announced. Exit the exercise area. Sarah cursed and pulled away, angry at herself. The diplomatic meeting took place on neutral ground, a space station that the Azuran Coalition maintained at the edge of the solar system. Sarah had not expected to be part of the delegation, but General Hawkins had insisted. You are the face of Earth's resistance, Hawkins had explained, the pilot who laughed at orbital bombardment and lived. Ambassador Thrixkel specifically asked for you to be present. Apparently, your little stunt has become something of a legend in certain circles. Now Sarah stood in a conference room that looked like it had been designed by someone who had never seen humans before. The chairs were the wrong shape, the gravity felt slightly off, and the air had a tang to it that made her nose itch. But she stood straight in her dress uniform, flanked by Marcus on one side and the Secretary of State on the other. Ambassador Thrixkel entered with a small entourage. Up close, he was even more alien than on the view screen, his movements fluid and strange, his multiple eyes tracking different people simultaneously. But his voice, translated through the device on his thorax, was calm and almost friendly. Major Chen, he said, approaching her directly, the pilot who turned back the Krithian assault. I have read the reports, studied the recordings. Quite remarkable. I had help, Sarah replied carefully. A lot of help. Modesty. How human. Thrixkel's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. But your actions were the catalyst. You demonstrated that humans are not prey. This is significant. The Secretary of State, a polished diplomat named Reeves, stepped forward. Ambassador, we appreciate your interest in Earth. However, we are cautious. 3 times now, alien species have come to our world with hostile intent. Why should we believe your coalition is different? Because we remember being young, Thrixkel replied, gesturing for everyone to sit at the oddly shaped table. My species, the Azuran, achieved spaceflight 8,000 years ago. We were fortunate. The first species we encountered was benevolent, helped us navigate the dangers of the galaxy. Not all young species are so lucky. He activated a holographic display showing dozens of worlds. These are dead civilizations. Species that achieved spaceflight, drew the attention of the old empires and were harvested or enslaved or simply exterminated. The galaxy is full of graves.